everyone, this is Lucas from Enviral Design, and this is video number 6 in the GeoPix LED Pixel Mapper walkthrough series. Alright, here we're in the Performer mode, which is the VJ engine for GeoPix, and we've got a lot of buttons, a lot of controls, and this is where everything that we've done in the last 4 tabs and the last 4 videos kind of comes together into an interactive performance UI. So on the left here, we have our Smart Clip library. This is populated from disk. Every time that we add a new Smart Clip or hit refresh, it basically takes the folder we have specified here and it loads everything we've saved into this window. And if you remember back in the Smart Clip editor, when you save your clip, you have the option to save it as a Smart Clip or an effect. Well, that basically indicates where your clip will show up, under clips or under effects, under clips or under effects. So here we have tags, which is another thing that you can save and specify when you save out. And for every new tag that you add to the pool, they show up here in this this big window that you can select different tags for different styles or different themes or moods or whatever you have set up. And so that's just a way to quickly sort through your clips while you're VJing on the fly, so you can find the next clip to throw in here quickly. So refresh has the same progress meter bar. This takes a bit of performance hit, so I recommend doing this before you start a show or performance, so that way you can have everything loaded and ready. Up here we have the left-right deck, very familiar if you've VJ'd before. Here we have all of our effects. We have our wipes, we have our drag and drop jams, which are our user-defined effects created from smart clips that are saved as effects. And these you can drag and drop these here. We'll get back to that in a sec. Here we have, I don't know if I mentioned, this is if you have some tags selected, you can invert, select all, select none, just some automation controls for the tags. Excuse me. Over here we have strobes and chase, which we have the traditional strobe and some others. I'll get into that in a sec. Time multiplier controls the speed that the step sequencer runs at. This is, however, independent of the clip speed, which is the speed that your actual animations in your smart clips run at. Here we have some other buttons, very self-explanatory. Content from editor basically sources the live stream that you're getting from your smart clip editor, while content from performer will switch your content over to the UI from here, so that when this is what you click on when you're ready to VJ basically, or do anything that's performance final ready. Open Visualizer will give you this window, and you can move it around, put it on a second monitor, whatever you'd like. There's some buttons up here, and this is where all the MIDI and OSC mapping comes from, and we'll get into that here in a bit. Let's talk about the rest of these buttons over here. So we have clip speed. As you can see, when we crank this up, our clips go faster, and this applies to all of our clips. And of course, when you go down, things slow down quite a lot. And interpolate frames kind of goes with clip speed. If you have a faster computer, you can afford to turn that on, and it does look better, because when you have content recorded at 30 frames a second, and you're running, and right now we're running at 34 because we have this preview window open. I close this, it'll go up to about 55, 60. Usually when you're running at 60 frames a second and you have fast moving content on LEDs, it tends to not look that great. And so interpolate frames is kind of like a pseudo 60 frames a second for all your clips. Now, that being said, if you can render out your clips as 60 frames a second video footage, and you have a fast hard drive like a solid state drive, you're going to get the absolute best performance possible, and your animations will be, smooth and wonderful looking and all that stuff. So this is kind of a hack for 30 frame a second content to make it look better, but it will take a performance hit on your computer if it's not a very fast one. So something to be mindful of. You can turn that on and off, play with it, see what works best for you. So for example, you can see this clip is one I got off the internet. It's not my own, and you can see the stepping that happens when interpolate is off. However, if I turn this on, it's basically just interpolating between the frames and blending, and it looks a lot better. So that's just to give you a visual of what that does. So tempo tap, again, very straightforward. If you're a VJ before, you've probably run into something like this before. Tempo tap does not currently impact the clip speed. It does, however, set the BPM for the step sequencer. And this is a multiplier for that speed, essentially. And R here, these two buttons are reset buttons. So if you have your speed all the way up or your speed all the way down, when you hit R, it resets it. This little green line is kind of like home base for your speed. It returns it to the normal speed of your video. This will reset your step sequencer, to the beginning of its sequence, wherever it is. So once you tap in a new tempo, you might wait for a drop or a certain measure, and then you would hit R to kind of like set this back to the beginning, and then you'd be synced up. These things you can map to your MIDI controller, so you can have access to a button there, or if you're using, by the way, this interface is designed to be used primarily with a touchscreen monitor. That's how I use it, and I think that's the easiest way because it gives you access to this very rich UI, but it also doesn't require that you have a whole bunch more hardware. However, I do realize that MIDI controllers and OSC and all the other stuff is widely used, and for good reason. You know, the tactile response you get from buttons and sliders is kind of hard to replace with a touchscreen interface. So having both is very beneficial, but that is why you see these really big wide controls, because all this stuff is meant to be manipulated with a touchscreen interface. So you can drag these things to the left, right deck, you can fade with your fingers, you can click these big tag buttons with your fingers. Same with these sliders. Everything's spaced out and big and spacious so that you can operate this however you see fit. Now, of course, you can use it with the mouse and keyboard, which is what I'm doing now, but it's made to give you a lot of options in terms of how you want to run the interface. Okay, so moving on, we've got the tempo tap and the reset clip speed, and we have a blackout slider. So blackout slider basically kills your LED lights and it fades it all to black. And here we have red, green, blue, so it's kind of similar in a way, but this is a unified brightness thing, and these are really for keying. That's the main difference. So moving on to effects, we have the strobes and chase. Let's start over here at wipes. This is kind of left to right, it's a little easier to understand. Wipes, let's drag an actual color on here. Wipes will basically give you a blackout that goes from the center outwards. This is a great way to transition into another effect or another clip. So you can be holding this down and with your finger grab a clip and drag it up to your left and right deck, get a whole new set of clips set up real quickly, and then let go, and you'll be right back into your new clips and your new arrangement quite easily. Next to that, we have the rainbow, which is just a hue shift. Let's go ahead and put a black on the left here. And so if you trigger this by itself, this is what it looks like. This thing puts out a lot of light, and it's very colorful light. So this is a great thing to use, light up the crowd, and just hold it down for a bit. If you jam on it, things get a little bit more interesting. There's a lot of bars and lines that start to show up. This effect is fully generative. In the future, may have more generative effects that do kind of neat things like this, but for right now, they're expensive in terms of performance, and they take a lot of work to optimize. And so these are the ones I thought were the most useful to the most scenarios and situations. Below that, and so because I realize you can't possibly do everything with generative effects, and people should have the ability to create their own. Tapping into smart clips, you have the effects. And this, I know I mentioned this briefly a second ago, but effects are basically smart clips that you can trigger momentarily instead of like loops that you play continuously. So for example, I have 4 clips that are specified as effects. These 4 here, they're already saved to these pads, but just to show you, you right click on these, you can clear them, reset them back to nothing. Let's drag blue pulse here. And as you see in the preview down the bottom right, we have this kind of hitting our entire pixel map. You'll notice that if you let go in mid-pulse, it resets immediately back to the beginning of the clip. So you can do some very neat momentary kind of interactions with those, and depending on what kind of clips you have, you can do some pretty some pretty neat compositions. These all add together. So if you have multiple ones pressed down at the same time, and I'll show you this later with the MIDI controller, they're all layered on top of each other as a screen blend mode. So you can have an effect and then lay another effect over top of that, and that's a pretty neat way to composite stuff and do some interactive stuff kind of on the fly. So let's move on from that. We've got, I don't know if I mentioned this, we have the all, invert, select all, none. I think I did. We have the strobes and chase, which are more traditional effects. So these are also generative. They use the panels and the fixtures and the strips and whatever else you've just defined in the panel editor that you've placed in the pixel map editor. It uses those as light fixtures, as like a unified light fixture. So this is one of the great things about I think about low-res LEDs and using them for stage lighting, is you have the ability to create these kind of custom shapes out of GeoPix for one, but anything that you use, and you can put video on it. With GeoPix, it really is, the strength of it is that you can pixel map all these things and put your own content on there quickly, easily, intuitively. But the other aspect that I think makes it really strong is that you can also use these lights as actual stage lights. So notice how I have these things arranged on this arch, kind of in a stage mock-up. You've got, these clusters and even these little panels that if you could make those just blinders, flashers, and lights that you could just strobe, that'd be really cool, because now it's a multi-purpose light. It's not just doing one thing, but it's doing several. And that's exactly what these buttons and controls are really designed to do. So the strobe is just that. It overrides the content momentarily while you're holding the button down, and it just does a very simple white strobe. If you key these sliders, say you want green, you get that effect showing up on the strobe as well. So you can get different color strobes with different effects. Very useful. On top of the white strobe, which is the basic one, we have the color average strobe. So this strobe basically averages the colors in each pixel, or I'm sorry, in each panel. So let's just kind of zoom in here so you can see what's going on. Let me hold this down. Notice how each panel is basically, it seems like it's flashing randomly, but what's really happening is the colors that's coming from the content behind it are being averaged together into one RGB color, and that's being applied to the entire panel. So it's similar to the regular strobe, but it's using the content to feed in the color. Multiply is similar. It's a little more straightforward. It's basically just multiplying the white strobe on top of your content. So now you're strobing your content, and I think this is a pretty neat look. It just depends what kind of content you have. One may be more useful than the other. For example, actually there's a clip in here I have that does look pretty good with the color average. And this goes to show a big, vague, smooth shapes like ramps or circles or just random things moving around will look really good with the color average, because you get this big shape that's essentially reduced to like an 8-bit kind of old school strobe type of graphic. You still see the shape, but it's no longer a defined texture shape, but more of a kind of a notion of a shape through the panels and the strips, which is kind of neat. Again, you got to experiment, you got to try new things, see what looks good. Let's see how this one looks. Yeah, all right. It doesn't have enough color in it to really, or enough volume to really work, but this one's a little chaotic. Yeah, it just depends. I don't have any content in here that really works well with this strobe at the moment, but you do get the idea. So below the strobes, we have chase and chase multiply. Signal chase does not care about your mapping. It's simply sending chases down the length of your signal chain. So these are very simple controls, but they do pretty well, especially on strips. We've got these two knobs, by the way. Speed, bias. Speed is the speed at which your chase or your strobe moves. So you're really slow or really fast. Really slow. a lot faster. Bias is basically the more the slider is towards the right, the more of your panels will be on at a given time when you're strobing. So if I turn this up, you'll see most of them are on. It's similar for the chase. When it's all the way to the left, you have very short chases, and when it's all the way to the right, you have really long chases. In fact, if you go all the way up, you just have solid white. All the way down, you have solid black. So this is actually a pretty neat way to transition into other effects and other clips. You know, you can fade right into pure white, and then you can key it down, and then you can do a blackout and drop in some new clips, and then release all that stuff, and then you have a new set of content to work with. So a lot of ways to manipulate that quickly and sneakily, I guess you could say. Let's see, we got the step sequencer. Let's talk about that next. So the way this works is you just middle mouse click using the mouse wheel on your mouse, or if you have a middle mouse button, and you just drag this to buttons up here. These buttons, you cannot click on them normally. The only way you can click on them is to release. So you middle mouse drag controls onto this. And you'll notice down here in the preview, we have that blackout that's just kind of fading across. Let's drag another clip on here. Okay, so this could be, I don't know, like a heartbeat kind of pulse thing. There's some stuff you can do with that, and you'll see this green square is highlighting every time it hits the sequencer. And so you can layer stuff, right? So you can have the rainbow on every other, and so you can automate some of the controls. Of course, you can also drag your drag and drop drams up here, and if you do this for several buttons in a row, it will stay on for several beats, essentially, in that measure. Same with signal chase. All of these controls will map to this. Okay, we gotta turn our bias down. And so that's pretty neat. And so if you want to release buttons, you can just click on them. It'll turn them off. It'll release everything that's on that note. And if you want to release everything, you just click the R, and everything comes off, and you're right back to square one. So that is the step sequencer. This is a largely experimental feature. I'm still trying to find the best way to make this accessible for people while performing. I might add a feature in the near future where you can save presets, so you can create a sequencer preset and then save it and then load it by dragging and dropping it onto the entire bar. That way you could design sequences ahead of time and load them on demand instead of doing this middle mouse drag kind of as you go. That'll be hopefully on another feature rollout in the near future. What else do we got? I think that just about covers the main parts of the UI. So next, I'd like to talk to you about the OSC, MIDI mapping, and this of course is the help dialog, which you can check out if you need help. MIDI mapper and the OSC mapper both are essentially the same thing. A little difference in the connection settings, but since the OSC mapper works kind of like the MIDI mapper, I'm just going to show you the MIDI mapper. And just know that the OSC mapper is meant to use with things like Touch OSC or other OSC-driven interfaces. It doesn't so matter what you name your controls in TOHSC, for example. All that matters is that your computer and your device are on the same network and can communicate with each other. You can use a command prompt ping just to test that. Also, make sure that your tablet or your phone or your iPhone or whatever is set to communicate on the same port that's specified here. And then also make sure that your tablet, phone, iPhone, Android, whatever has the IP address of your computer that's running GeoPix specified. Now this is pretty common stuff. You probably already know this, But just to be clear, that's how the OSC works. And once your two computers are hooked up and can communicate, just enable device, and you'll start seeing messages come in here as you push controls. And the way this works, as far as assigning, works exactly the same as a midi mapper. So we'll just go ahead and talk about the midi mapper for now. All right. So I've got my Samsung Conspiracy over here, and obviously you can see it, you can hear it hitting everything. I'm going to give you guys a brief rundown of kind of how you can use a Minimap controller with GeoPix and just how easy it is to map stuff quickly, maybe before a show or whatever. First of all, hit reset, that clears everything. Refresh devices may work. However, if you're not seeing your device in the drop-down list here, you need to basically kill GeoPix, plug in your controller, and then fire GeoPix up again. GeoPix should be started after your controller is plugged in. So once you pick your device, just hit set device, and if it's showing up in the drop-down and you hit device, it's probably fine, and you'll know that's for sure true when you start moving controls on your mapper, or I'm sorry, on your MIDI controller. So as you see, this square here basically shows you the name of the control you moved last, and it's showing you some numbers down here. So these numbers are important for the sliders and the knobs because the blue number on the left is your min and the green is your max. So when you assign a slider to a control, you want to go ahead and go from min to max so that it knows that you're assigning 0 to 127 to the sliders min to max, which is going to be 0 to 1 in the software. So if you have another control, for example this, and then we go up to like 50, you're not mapping the full range of your knob or your slider. So it's really important to go all the way. Most of the time that's what you're going to want to do. When you're dealing with buttons, right, I have velocity sensitive buttons that give me a range. It doesn't matter how high you go on a button because we're only using 0 to 1. So that's only important on knobs and sliders. So right now I'm moving the one slider I have for my mix. Let's drag some more interesting clips in here. So very easy. As soon as you get your min max and you update your slider, you just left click drag this to a control. You'll get a red box and you're MIDI mapped. Simple as that. So you can see how fast this is to map things. I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick map of all of the main sliders I typically use. My red, green, blue, blackout. My tempo tap. Maybe my reset for the tempo tap. My speed slider for my clips. My knobs for my signal and chase. My buttons for my strobes and chase. Let's see, what's going on? Right. Okay, and then we also have our effects. And then our wipes. And then maybe we can assign this to reset our step sequencer. So just in not even a minute, I pretty much MIDI mapped all the important buttons with the MIDI mapper. We can close this now. So we can jam and we can adjust things in real time. We can do effects. Actually, let's open up the visualizer so you guys can actually see this on your monitors. So as you can see, we have the wipeout, the rainbow. We have things like this effect, which we can trigger in real time. We have our strobes. We can turn our speed down or turn it up. I have some really weird velocity sensitive knobs that don't work so well on this controller, but you get the idea. It could be smoother with a better MIDI controller. We've got strobes, you can increase that. Let's get, there we go. You can increase the bias in real time. You slow it down, go to black, and then switch to that, and then trigger stuff. Where's my strobes? Yeah, so you get the idea. Also, something that's kind of cool, it's going to definitely hit performance pretty hard with this big of a map, is the simulate lighting. So you can VJ and see your stage or your art installation, whatever it is, in real time. And you can see exactly what it's going to look like. We can do strobes. There we go. Multiply strobe. Our chases. And we have this super flashy clip. Looks pretty cool. So a lot you can do with this interface, and I don't have anything connected to my computer right now in terms of LEDs, and I'm able to basically practice and put together a show without really having to you know, connect anything expensive to my computer. I could do this in the comfort of my office or my own home. I can do a screen capture like I'm doing for you now, and I could send this to a client. They're like, hey, what do you think of these animations? Do you like A, B, C, and D? Okay, not so much C. We'll go ahead and find something else for that clip. It's just very easy to test things, and that's the whole goal with GeoPix, is to make iteration fast and easy and fun, and just not this technical drudgery that unfortunately happens sometimes when it comes down to content creation. So that is the performance editor. Obviously, when you're performing for real, you gotta turn off any floating windows, and better to turn off all of this stuff, honestly. Make as little, most of these things optimize, self-optimize when you move away from them, but in the Smart Clip Editor, be sure to toggle off these two buttons and shrink that down. And that's the performance engine. Thanks for watching, and the next video will be about the Automator. Super exciting, very new feature I've added just recently, and it's going to allow you to create shows and schedules and playlists of smart clips that you don't even have to stand next to or operate. They will run themselves. So that's next. Thanks for watching.